The galaxy called it the greeting. A single, perfect pulse of coherent light and radio, repeating every 11 hours from a source beyond the galactic rim. It was beautiful. It was complex. It was undeniably artificial. It was the first proof, after millennia of silent searching, that intelligence existed beyond their own. The Celestial Assembly, a fragile coalition of 17 spacefaring species, erupted in a celebration that crossed light years. The Zenth, quick and passionate, composed a symphonic reply in their harmonic language and broadcast it with their most powerful array within the hour. The Stoic Gorvians launched a probe carrying their complete biological and historical index on a direct intercept course. Humanity received the signal like everyone else. Their new deep space listening post at Neptune's L5 Lagrange point capturing its flawless structure. On Earth, the news sparked global jubilation. Parades were planned. Global addresses were drafted. The United Earth Council prepared to authorize a reply containing humanity's greatest art, mathematics, and a friendly hello. Dr. Lena Aris, head of xenolinguistics at the SETI Institute, watched the celebrations on her monitor with a cold knot in her stomach. She requested the raw data, not the cleaned, pretty version for the public, but the unfiltered feed. While the world cheered and the assembly species sent their enthusiastic replies, Aris and her small team worked through the night. They weren't looking for meaning. They were looking for structure. And they found it. The pulse was not a message. It was a loop. A perfect, closed, recursive algorithm. It contained no information beyond its own existence and impeccable timing. It's a ping, her lead programmer whispered, horrified. It's not saying anything. It's just listening for an echo. The Zenth were the first to die. Their harmonic reply, a masterpiece of frequency and math, traveled back along the path of the greeting. 23 hours later, a second pulse arrived. It was not from the original source. It originated from a point 10 light-years closer, directly along the line between the Zenth homeworld and the rim. It was louder, sharper. It contained a distorted, corrupted fragment of the Zenth's own symphony played back at 10 times the power. Then, the Zenth sun, a stable G-class star, flickered, not a natural dimming, but a stutter, as if a giant hand had passed before it. All transmissions from their world ceased in that same instant. Not a gradual failure. A simultaneous, system-wide silence. Panic, slower than light, but infinitely more destructive, ripped through the assembly. The Gorvian probe was still en route when their world vanished next. Their biological index, a testament to their existence, had been received, cataloged, and answered with a pulse that snuffed out their star. A pattern crystallized with terrifying clarity. The greeting was a trigger. The reply was a targeting beacon. The second, closer pulse was the weapon. The assembly descended into chaos and recrimination. Species accused each other of attracting the wrath. Some, in desperation, launched preemptive attacks into deep space, their weapons firing blindly at the approaching second pulses, which only seemed to absorb the energy and strengthen. Humanity remained silent. Dr. Aris had taken her findings not to the celebratory council, but to the underground strategic command. Her directive, signed into emergency law in the dead of night, was Project Mute. Every planetary and lunar broadcast array was to be physically disconnected. Every deep space probe's transmitter was to be deactivated. The great orbital antennas were turned not toward the stars, but into the dead ground of the moon. To the rest of the galaxy, it appeared humanity had been struck already. Their vibrant, noisy datasphere, once a telltale bubble of radio and laser chatter, vanished from the cosmic background. The human world went dark, not in power, but in voice. It was the most difficult command to enforce: absolute, total, broadcast silence. No scientific data beamed to orbit. No entertainment streams. No diplomatic hails to the panicking assembly. Military networks went to laser line only, point to point, invisible to deep space. Civilian networks were throttled to buried fiber optics. The assembly, bleeding worlds, screamed for humanity to respond, to coordinate, to fight. Their pleas hit a wall of literal silence. A Gorvian survivor ship, fleeing their dark system, approached the solar system screaming warnings on all frequencies. They received no answer. Interpreting the silence as destruction, they veered away, carrying the news that Earth, too, had fallen. Inside the silence, humanity watched. Their receivers were still active, drinking in the terrifying data. They mapped the progress of the second pulses, watching them leapfrog from responding world to responding world, each time getting closer to the galactic core, each time stronger. They were not watching an invasion. They were watching a cleanup, a process. Something was methodically silencing every source of coherent, intelligent reply. Dr. Aris presented her chilling thesis to command. It's not malicious. It's automatic. We're not facing an enemy. We're facing a gardener pruning a noisy branch. Our only hope is to stop looking like the branch.
The storm of second pulses raged for 2 years. 7 species of the assembly were rendered silent. Their stars dimmed but not extinguished, their planets intact but lifeless of signal. The greeting pulse continued its relentless, perfect broadcast from the rim. But now fewer and fewer echoes returned to it. The galactic background noise of intelligence was dropping precipitously. Then a change. A second pulse, having erased the last responding world in a sector, pulsed once into the new quiet and received no new target. Pulsed again, a search pattern. Then it faded. The pattern repeated across the front. The weapon was encountering silence and, finding nothing to answer, was powering down. The greeting itself continued, but now it was just a shout into a quiet forest. No echo returned. No new second pulses were generated. The assembly's remnants finally understood. In a final, desperate bid for survival, they attempted to mimic humanity's silence. But for many, it was too late. Their civilizations were built on constant, system-wide communication. Turning it off was like stopping their own hearts. Civil wars broke out over the decision. Some factions, believing secrecy was betrayal, deliberately broadcast defiant messages, only to be erased hours later. The path of destruction became chaotic, but it gradually slowed, then stopped. The greeting pulse from the rim continued, unanswered and alone. A decade later, the greeting pulse ceased. As suddenly as it began, the perfect rhythm stopped. The galaxy was left in a terrible, wounded quiet. Of the 17 species of the assembly, 6 remained fully silent, 4 were shattered remnants and 7 were gone. Only 1 had emerged completely unscathed, physically and technologically intact: humanity. When the survivors finally re-established contact, their first message to Earth was not one of thanks, but of bewildered accusation. You knew. You let us die in your silence. The human response, composed by Dr. Aris and approved after much debate, was brief. We did not know. We suspected. Any intelligence powerful enough to send a greeting that everyone can hear does not need to introduce itself. It already knows you're there. The only thing it needs to know is if you're listening. We chose to only listen. The lesson was carved into the rebuilt assembly's founding charter. The human principle was enacted. First Contact Protocol Alpha is mandatory silence and observation for a period no less than 1 full cycle of any unsolicited signal. The galaxy had learned the cost of eager conversation. Humanity did not become leaders. They became sentinels, the quiet keepers of the watch. When the next strange signal was detected a century later, a faint, drifting melody from a globular cluster, the first call the new assembly made was not to their warriors or diplomats. It was to the humans, the experts at waiting. And as the galaxy held its breath, the humans simply listened, calibrated their instruments, and advised the only action that guarantees survival when you don't understand what you're hearing: absolute, patient, life-saving silence.